I'm Haley B. Miller, and this is Ohio Politics Explained, a podcast where you give us 15 minutes and we give you all the news you need to sound smart and impress your friends.
No surprise, my first thought was, John, I wish you were here. I wish you could experience this. I wish you could know that our marriage cannot be erased. What I wasn't expecting to feel was this realization that for the first time in my life as an out gay man, I felt like an equal American.
That's Jim Obergefell. 10 years ago, the Sandusky resident sat in a courtroom as the U.S. Supreme Court decided gay marriage was the law of the land. Obergefell had fought for the right to have his marriage recognized after his husband, John Arthur, died of ALS. On June 26, 2015, he won, a victory shared by same-sex couples around the country. But even after a decade, Obergefell is uneasy about the future of gay marriage, not to mention other rights that gay and transgender Americans are still fighting for today. Joining me for this special episode of OPE is Laura Bischoff, who interviewed Obergefell. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks.
In your conversation with Jim, he talked a lot about the positive impact of this decision. He's officiated weddings, people came out to him, and one person even said the case saved her life. But he doesn't want you to call him a hero.
I feel like John and I just simply found ourselves in a position where we had a simple yes or no question to answer. Were we willing to fight for ourselves? Were we willing to fight for what we believed in? And were we willing to fight to exist? And to me, that wasn't a brave decision. That was an obvious decision. Yes, of course we were going to do this because our marriage deserved to exist. John deserved to die with an accurate death certificate. And we deserved to be seen by the state we called home.
So I was not in Ohio at the time. How did people here view this decision when it came down, especially since there was an Ohio guy right at the center of it?
Well, I think it varied. I think some conservatives continued to oppose same-sex marriage. Some others were kind of resigned to it. I remember catching then Governor John Kasich outside the State House and asked him about it. And he said something like, well, it's the law of the land now. And of course, thousands of couples celebrated and immediately got married in courthouses and city halls and churches all across the state.
Yeah. And after a decade, a lot has changed, but some things haven't. Ohio still has a gay marriage ban on the books. After the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, Justice Clarence Thomas said the court should revisit Obergefell and another case that overturned anti-sodomy laws. And Obergefell is worried.
10 years on, I'm worried about marriage equality. I really am, because there have been so many people who refuse to let it lie. And I just honestly don't understand why. How has any queer marriage ever impacted a straight marriage? It hasn't. And yet, so many of these people continue to attack us, attack our families, our right to marry, all of our rights, especially the trans community.
So, former President Biden did sign the Respect for Marriage Act in 2022, which requires states to recognize all marriages. Does that mean anything in Ohio if Obergefell is overturned?
Yeah, it does. If Obergefell were overturned, Ohio's constitutional ban on same-sex marriage would kick back in. It was never removed from the Constitution over the last, decade. But the Respect for Marriage Act would block states like Ohio from failing to recognize marriages, same-sex marriages that were performed in other states. So it would kind of force Ohioans who want to get married to go seek out another state that's more favorable and then return to Ohio.
Okay. So, kind of how it used to be. Obergefell and John Arthur got married in a different state.
Yeah, but at the time, Ohio wouldn't recognize their marriage, and that kind of played out in the form of not putting Obergefell's name on the death certificate, or marking that John Arthur was a married man on his death certificate.
Right. I want to circle back to transgender rights, which is something Obergefell talked about a lot. He believes people who oppose gay marriage needed a new target, and that's when they started attacking the transgender community. He doesn't see that going away anytime soon, but he did have a message for the rest of the LGBTQ community.
We are all considered outsiders by straight society. We should be fighting for each other, because when there's transphobia, misogyny, racism, all of that is within the LGBTQ plus community. And all we do is help the opponents of the entire LGBTQ plus community when we have those attitudes, when we don't support our trans family or other minorities within the LGBTQ plus community.
What is your sense of the current moment? Do you think transgender rights are going to follow the same path as gay marriage?
Well, that's yet to be determined. The political war against transgender people is really fierce. And after gay marriage was widely accepted, conservatives pivoted to trans people as a means to kind of rally their base. We've seen bathroom bills, sports bans, no care for minors, limits on drag shows. These are all ideas that are swirling around the legislature or actually on the books as law. And, all of these bills and laws target a really small, marginalized group. And I think the key to changing public opinion is visibility. And it's very scary to be authentic and out given today's political environment. So at this time, I don't see a similar tipping point for the trans community that we saw in gay marriage, at least not on the immediate horizon.
Yeah. And as you pointed out, Ohio has done a lot in this space, and we saw transgender rights be a big topic in the U.S. Senate race last year, even the presidential race last year. President Donald Trump, since he took office earlier this year, has rolled back transgender rights at the federal level. So, I guess to your point, we'll see what happens. But I do think gay marriage, for the most part, with some obvious exceptions, kind of cycled through society as initially this thing that no one wanted to mess with, and then people either became more accepting of it or either decided that this wasn't the fight that they were going to pick anymore, especially after Obergefell.
I think that a lot of people, they saw 10 years go through and, all these people got married, their cousins, their neighbors, their coworkers, and it didn't have any kind of dramatic effect on their own marriages. And so, the sky didn't fall. So,
yeah, we're all still okay. We have covered a lot of ground today, but before we wrap up, I wanted to ask, is there anything that struck you about your conversation with Obergefell, and what do you feel like his case means for Ohio today?
It's interesting. John and Jim decided to take a stand and take action at a time when, John was dying of ALS, which is a brutal disease, and Jim was then grieving his loss, and their fight really opened the doors for hundreds of thousands of Americans to get married. There's 770,000 same-sex couples married across the country.
Oh, wow.
More than 20,000 in Ohio. And they got the legal protections that come with marriage, and they also got to be seen for who they are and who they love. And I think during and after the interview, I was struck by how positive Jim Obergefell is and how he has used this national platform that he has to spread that optimistic message of pride, inclusion, and love.
He unsuccessfully ran for the Ohio House, I want to say last year, a couple years ago. Did he say anything about his own plans? He's obviously become an activist in the LGBTQ community. I'm curious if he's going to kind of keep doing what he's doing or if he wants to try running for office again.
I don't think he's going to run for office again. He uses this platform in speaking engagements and raising money and supporting various causes and nonprofits. He has a wine company called Equality Vines that's got really fun labels and marketing. And, I think he is pretty happy, using the platform as he has at this point.
To hear more from Obergefell about the Supreme Court decision and LGBTQ rights today, check out Laura's stories on our websites.